All right, now that I've made my brush and I have it loaded in with the brush settings I want, I just make the size something I'm more comfortable with, and I'm using it on a base color layer, and I'm using it at 100%, and I am just filling it up like a coloring book. Doesn't matter if you're going over a linear sketch, you go ahead and cover up your lines. I call it the kill whitey phase because we don't want any of that white from the background showing. And we're also building color palettes here. That's why we're doing it at 100%. Layers that go on top of the base color, they might be at lower opacities. But right now, I don't want anything to be subtle. This is the base of my artwork. And I'm inspired more by this William de Kooning, that kind of color palette, than just stealing them from the photograph, because the photograph colors are honestly pretty dull. And I want that energy, so use a pretty big brush. Scratchy, scratchy. And what's fun about doing Andy Warhol as my subject is I always have a lot of like pasty whites I can steal and fill. Remember, don't use the white of the background. Always fill it with your own found color. By holding down Option. I somehow got into a different phase there. So I have this beautiful deep blue that I can use. Using black and using white is kind of a bad idea, just in painting in general, because it really deadens the opportunities for color and for depth. So whether you're doing representational or abstraction, I recommend not using white or black solidly. Instead, always having some color to your tones, even if they're very dark, like very dark purples, like I'm using right now. Very dark blues, very dark greens, all of those work better than actual black. Very dark reds. And I'm not getting too detailed. And if I need to, I can even make my brush bigger. It's pressure sensitive. I set that under the brush settings. But that allows me to really fill up a lot pretty quickly. So I need a white that is different. Let's see. There we go. I love to steal the color from reference, but you can also take it from the swatches. You can take it from the color. A light purple. But don't use solid white. And when you steal directly from your reference, you'll be shocked at how dark these colors are. Especially when they're on a bright white background. Got these kind of toxic greenish yellows from de Kooning. Really, really ugly colors. Try to make those work. It's the challenge. The pinks. It starts to look like the Mick Jagger a little bit. And I want to start painting his eyes open, right? So that will be on the base paintings as well. Sometimes you have to make your reference a little bit bigger to do that. Oh, that's a nice color. That cream that's on the Mick Jagger print. So the rotoscoping really only helps you kind of lay out the basic shapes. Because the shape painting starts to cover up all of that pretty quickly. You have to make decisions about what to keep, what to paint over. I don't use the eraser when I do digital painting just because you paint with a different color. You know, whenever you need to redefine an edge, you just paint it with another color. And I try not to zoom in too much with the base painting because it's just all about getting it filled in. This is white, kind of grayish, bluish hair coming out at different angles. I want a really light pink. It's a little bit yellowish. There we go, for his skin behind his glasses. I'm not worried about painting his glasses, but I'm trying to keep that shape in mind. And again, even though it feels weird, it's good to do this at 100% opacity, the base painting layer. So can I get all of this filled in our remaining 10 minutes? Yes. I just need to not get distracted. So you decide where you want the eye to go. And you put less detail in the filling things that you're less interested in. Like the jacket, I'm not that interested in. I'm going to make it colorful. I like this kind of torn edge paper aesthetic from the Warhol prints. But I'm not just going to make it this big sea of brown like the photo reference. But I need to get it filled. And it's nice if your digital painting isn't going off the edge too. That's why I expanded my boundaries here, so I can let it grow when needed. I can always steal colors from my reference or from places I've previously painted. I like the yellow shirt. And the painting's starting to get some personality. To me, that's the challenge. This painting should add something that a photograph can't do. And it's okay if your portrait doesn't look exactly like the person. It's okay if your pet doesn't look exactly like your pet. Ultimately, it's about learning this final type of digital media discipline. But also infusing it with your own personality and interest. So I'm just using that brush tool. I'm just holding down Option to steal colors when I steal colors. And I'm using my custom brush at 100% opacity, nice and big. And depending on how you made your brush, this is a lot like kind of a crayon. For what I'm doing. And you can see how it's very different than digital coloring. This is very different than doing flats. Flat local color for digital coloring. All right, now only got a few minutes left, so I gotta fill in all these white spots, right? With color where I want the color. Let's see, I want a pale or blue. There we go. And then some pink right here. Always modify the color you select by using the color selector here. I don't have any greens. I always push it into the greens as well. Photographs are actually very limited in their color spectrum most of the time, especially pre-digital photographs, because of the processing was limited in the types of colors it could support. So if you only limit yourself to taking colors from reference, you're not going to be using all the colors available to you as a digital practice. Okay. So now what do I do? How do I prep it for my more refined paint layers, which will come next? And I'll start at the beginning of next class to finish it off. So remember, we don't have very long for this, so we just have to attack it all the way through. So for our refined paint layers, we need to solidify the base color. So that's the base color, all right? I could turn on my shape sketch color, put it underneath the base color, and layer those together, right? So what would I do? I would transform the shape sketch, and you can see I got most of the stuff in the head right, but I didn't make the shoulders broad enough. That's something I often do with my sketching because I'm so used to cartooning and making shoulders really small, you know, making the heads big, shoulders small. So I can just cut that up and transform it. This is just going to run behind, especially if I want that kind of collage cut up look. This could be an interesting background. Just transforming it within the same layer, not making duplicates. Just kind of cutting and pasting, putting things around. All right, get rid of this. I don't need this either.